Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Zach with an H. Very excited to introduce today's guest. He is a producer at ESPN. He once shot 92.5% from the foul line, one of the best in all three divisions. He is Jaren Yang. Jaren, a pleasure to welcome you on. We go back a bit. My last basketball call as a college student was your final game as a college student between Endicott and Gordon. So looking forward to talking ball and your career today.
Definitely. No, thanks for having me, Zach. Yeah, looking forward to it.
So Jaren, whenever anyone comes on the pod, we always love to start in the early years. So when you were younger, what was the first career that young Jaren wanted to have?
I grew up loving, it sounds a little corny, but I grew up loving Sports Center. Grew up loving ESPN, and that was since I can remember. Once I learned how to turn TV on, it was ESPN, Sports Center, sports. Watching a lot of San Francisco Giants games. I just knew I wanted to work in sports, whether that was in media, whether that was behind the desk, whether that was playing. It was, like most people um, growing up who love sports. I'm sure you were similar to this, but it consumed my entire life, and to this day, sports is still right at the forefront of everything I do, including my job. So, I didn't have a clear vision, but I knew. Um, my parents told me at a young age, people have to work these games. Like this stuff, it's not just hobby. It can be a profession. So I kind of just grew up with that mindset, knowing that, I wanted to do something in sports. And luckily, I've done that so far.
Yeah, you absolutely have. You've been at ESPN for 7 years, and we will get to that. But we're working our way up slowly. So we fast forward ahead a bit from young Jaren to 18-year-old Jaren, who decides that going to a small school of about 1,200 kids in Wenham, Massachusetts, on the North Shore was the move. So, Jaren, what was it that drew you initially to attending Gordon College?
Yeah. So I played basketball my entire life. And um, I knew once I got to my junior and senior year that, playing college basketball was, was realistic in terms of, Division twos or Division threes. So I started getting recruited by a couple colleges. It was actually my center on the team, Troy Reich. He was getting recruited by Gordon College. And Todd Murphy, the head coach still at Gordon College, came to our winter classic essentially for in high school and during our senior year, and I played really well. And he asked Troy, he was like, "Hey, who's that guard?" And it kind of just went on from there. I started getting recruited by Gordon, all because my friend Troy Reich, who actually played for Wake Forest, he walked on to Wake Forest. So a little different from Gordon, but that's what happened. They flew me out, had a great recruiting trip, um, and I grew up. On the West Coast here in the Bay Area, and I never been to the East Coast. Um, so it was definitely a culture shock, but I don't regret it one bit. It was a great opportunity for me, and I stayed there after college as well for a couple years, working at ESPN. So um, that's how I got to Gordon. That's how I heard of Gordon. I wasn't seeking it really. Um, just kind of got lucky with one of my other teammates getting recruited.
Yeah, your pal Troy, 23 games at Wake Forest. He got the start on his senior day. He only averaged about a point a game, but that means he scored 23 points in the ACC. That's still pretty legit. So shout
Yeah,
out to
incredible.
him.
Yeah, yeah.
So while you're at Gordon, out off the basketball court, you spent some time working with a blog. You're a Warriors fan, so it goes without saying, being from the Bay, the Cavs and Warriors met every year of the finals during both our college years from
Mhm.
2015 to 2018. And so you had some blog posts on the athletic. How do you pronounce the name of the blog you wrote for?
Athletica, yeah,
The
Athletica.
Athletic.
It's like
There's a Q in
Q&A,
there.
yeah.
So you wrote for the Athletica blog. What do you remember about comprising words? Because of course there's internships and opportunities, but here you're kind of firsthand talking about, and these series were incredible. I remember all the recordings I did back then, the games that we watched. But what do you remember about writing for that blog during the finals?
Yeah, that was, another friend in high school. He worked for Athletica, and he knew the person who started the blog, and he hit me up one day and was like, hey, I know you're really into sports and I know you're majoring in it and you want to work in it. And I think there's a great opportunity. Basically, they want 1 to 2 articles a week. And it's free flowing. It's whatever it's current. Just communicate with us what you're going to write on. And it was a blog where it was a little different where, I'd post an article or I'd post a question and we got interaction from people. So people would be able obviously you can comment on certain things, but basically if you go on espn.com you can put any article on there, but there isn't like a chat function. So that's what athletica q&a, that's what their whole idea was. So once or twice a week I'd post, um whether it was I remember Pat McAfee retired and said he was going to do some media like that, something like that. That were a topic that was relevant in sports. It didn't have to be just like NBA or anything on the field or on the court. So it was my first job or internship um, in sports in general. I think I was a sophomore in college. I was a sophomore in college. Eventually got moved to a supervisor role, but looking over some stuff. But it was very similar roles. Such a small company, and unfortunately, it didn't continue. But it was a great stepping stone for me. And at that point, I hadn't written. I hadn't done much journalism in terms of for sports, so um, that was great opportunity for me, and I also got credit for school, so it worked out well. But to any advice for that, it doesn't have matter how small or how big a company is, or a website is, a blog is. Start as a start and save your work, and it can be beneficial down the line.
And keeping it on the subject, Jaren, of Gordon, you shared the court with some incredible players in your time there. Notably Garrison Duvivier, one of the biggest big men I've ever seen play the
Mhm.
game. Very nice down low, and of course Eric Demers, who some may have heard of through his time with the Spurs summer league team, through playing with the Maine Celtics. He averaged 35 a game as a senior after we were both gone from the North Shore. But going back, talking about Eric and then maybe about Garrison. What do you remember, Jaren, about your time playing at Gordon, and how cool was it to share the floor with a guy that was a teammate of NBA champion Sam Hauser?
Yeah, no. So playing with them was awesome. My freshman year, they weren't there yet. They were still in high school. And it was so different. My role was, kind of the shot creator. Like go get a bucket. When we need it, if we're down in the game, we got to hit a three, like create the three. And then Eric and Garrison came. And that whole class really, a really, really talented class. So we started together for the next 3 years. Unfortunately, didn't win much in terms of like championships or anything, but it was great playing with them. Garrison, like you said, one of the most skilled big men. His pick and roll game was awesome. Set the pick, and he was the type of guy like Draymond Green. You could dump it off to him at the high post. You don't have to do a full pick and roll. You can just pick and pop almost, and he's going to create. So it got really different where I was turned into more of a spot up shooter, and then Eric was his game evolved more than anything I've ever seen. Um, he came in as a spot up shooter. He came in as, a really solid wing. And then I've never seen anyone work as hard as he does as well. Like that guy is more dedicated than I've ever seen as well. Being in the gym with him, playing one on one, playing, getting shots up just once or twice a day at least. So it's not a coincidence that he, you know, turned into the player he turned into. Like I left Gordon and he turned into the point guard because we didn't really have a point guard. And that's where his game I think really flourished. He had the ball in his hands and he, turned into that 35 point per game guy. So I didn't really witness that when he was with me. I think he was probably around 20 points per game,
Yep.
maybe a little under. Um, and he wasn't like going for 40 against University of Hartford when they were, Division One. Like those were the games that I was not on the court for. But I watched from afar and obviously still in contact with him and it was incredible. But like I said, not a coincidence. That guy works harder than anything I've ever seen. Um his shooting is, could any team, any level can use knockdown shooters. And that's evident in Eric.
I mean, most definitely. It's cool to see he's still playing. Cool to see, and I'm sure. Now, have you been back to Gordon? Have been an alumni game? where you shared the floor with him again? Any of those guys?
Not an alumni game. I don't know if he's been back to an alumni game either. He's a busy man playing overseas and whatnot. But I've had two cousins that actually played for Gordon after I left. Zach Quantico and now Sean Quantico, who's on the team now. So I keep in touch. Obviously, I watch when I can. Talk to them often. Zach graduated 2 years ago, and Sean's going to be a senior. So I'm still in contact with Coach Murphy and obviously Sean, and I watch all those games. So I still have ties to Gordon, and I'll continue watching as long as they're there, and as long as Coach Murphy's there too. I love that program, and like I said, no regrets going there.
And then right after Gordon, Jaren, you got the opportunity at ESPN where you still are today. How did that initially come about for you?
So this I tell this story, to a lot of people who are trying to work in sports, but um, my summer going into senior year, I studied abroad in Hong Kong, for HSBC, the bank, because I was a business major and sports major at Gordon, so I did the business side and studied abroad and took 2 classes, but also had an internship. But during this internship, um, I wouldn't say I was the most busy guy. I'd say, um, maybe 4 out of the 8 hours I was in there, I was working on, my tasks for the internship, and then the other 4 hours I was, networking on LinkedIn. That's when I made my LinkedIn, and I started connecting with every single person in sports. From, like, the Cincinnati Reds ticket sales guy to the New York Jets field manager, like, extremely broad sports angle I took in terms of connecting and just pitching myself. I still get messages to this day, of, prospective, students trying to get into the industry, and I try to help them out, but that's what I did exactly. I was in their shoes, pitching myself, and I tell people all the time, I took notes, and I'd say, "Is there anyone else you think I could reach out to?" Um, and I probably talked to maybe over 200 people, whether on the phone or through chatting, on LinkedIn. Um, and my success rate was probably less than 10%. People are busy, I get it, and I took no offense to it, but I shot my shot, and eventually I shot my shot to somebody who actually went to Gordon, and worked at ESPN, Mark Stadolnik. To this day, I give him a lot of credit because he's the one who basically gave me that connection at ESPN. He introduced me to another man who works at ESPN, Paul Wilson. That person introduced me to the hiring manager for the production assistant program at ESPN. So I did a mock interview during my senior year. Wasn't a real interview, but it was a mock one. And they said when the role opens, we'll hit you up. Um, it was about 3 or 4 months until they did hit me up. By that time, I had an internship lined up for Major League Baseball in New York City. Um, but that was only a 6 month internship, and I was really struggling to find housing, affordable housing with my internship uh, salary.
Yeah.
Um, so ESPN hit me up, and I went through with their interview process. No, telling them off the bat, hey, I have this internship for MLB. I already signed it. It's been in the works for over a month and a half, and I was really excited about it. Um, but they said, just take this trip to Bristol. You're not doing anything. We'll pay for it. You can come check out the campus, and I think we may be able to delay your start date, if anything, since you're doing this MLB thing. So I go through the whole process. I think 3 or 4 rounds of interviews at ESPN for a production assistant role. It was full time. Um, and at the very end, they said, we just spoke to higher ups, and unfortunately, you won't be able to do Major League Baseball and ESPN. Um, but we'll see what happens. We'll hit you up in a couple days. See if you even got the role. I ended up getting the role, and they said, you have 2 days. I'll never forget, it was during the Boston Marathon weekend. And in Boston, as you know, it's a
Mhm.
very special day, and um, we were partying and having fun and having a great time. But I had to send an email out beforehand, so I sent an email to my MLB manager, and she was on vacation for, like, I think 4 or 5 days. So she never got back to me. Um, so I took the ESPN job without really, having that concrete answer from MLB, because my email said, I have a full time opportunity at ESPN. how can is there any way you could give me like any guarantee, not guarantee, but like what are my chances of getting a full-time role? I never got a response. I later found out that she was on vacation, um, which made sense. So I took the ESPN role, and they said I did eventually get a response saying, so sorry. Is it too late? And I was like, yes, it is too late, but I still would love to know the answer just for my, state of
Mhm.
my mindset that going into ESPN. And they said, yeah, you made the right choice. Like, there's no guarantees with this MLB thing. Um, so that's how I have on. Long story short, network with people, and opportunities will come. You never know. It's I always tell people nowadays it's not really what you know going into it. It's who you know, especially in this industry. Um, I had very little multimedia savvy video skills, even journalism, like very, very novice in that type of area, but it was the people who I knew and presented myself in a certain way. So um, never lose confidence in yourself, in your abilities. Just put yourself out there.
You got to be your own biggest believer, right? Any message you send, any person you reach out to, no matter how high they are or how low they are, you got to expect that whatever percent answer rate you get, that it's going to come from that person in that note, right? You give it your all in that, and then by believing in yourself, you're projecting confidence to the other person.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, passing on from getting the gig to the early days, Jaren, what do you remember about those early days? And as somebody that's clearly very meticulous about preparation and going into everything ready to go, what types of things did you take note of early on as growth opportunities for Jaren Yang at ESPN?
So, like I said, I came in not knowing too much about like production in general. Um, when people start at ESPN, it's a lot of teleprompting, it's a lot of printing scripts, it's a lot of sound logging. So essentially listening to post game and you're logging it. You're logging whatever I don't know, Steph Curry said after the game. It doesn't have to be a finals game or anything either. It would be a regular season game. It's a lot of these like meticulous, like you said, very little like essential roles that are like um at times it could feel like you're working late night, you're not making the much money yet. Um and you're doing these roles that, don't require too much brain power. But the bigger picture was you're getting you know, working in production at ESPN, it's like you're all working for whether it's SportsCenter, NBA Today, or work on now, or it's NFL Live, or it's First Take. Everything is essential in terms of like the whole production. So the main producer needs that person logging that sound to read that, to see what we want to put on air. What sound bites do we want to use? The teleprompter is one of the most essential roles for our hosts. They need to know where we're going in the show, in a live TV show. So it really gave me that perspective, like I am essential. And I was lucky to have good mentors at ESPN, even to this day. Just kind of seeing the bigger picture and eventually moving up, and you're eventually producing a lot more video. You're doing like montages, you're doing highlights, and then you're seeing it on TV. Seeing your clips on TV, the produced clips that you worked on all day, hit on SportsCenter. That first feeling is incredible. So just making sure that I saw the bigger picture was always at the forefront of my mindset heading in, because I've at this point I've been a production assistant, a content associate, associate producer, content producer, and now I'm a producer. So I've had like 5 roles at ESPN already. And it's just moving up slightly every time. Um, and having a positive attitude, doing the little things, because they are essential.
And a lot has happened while you've been there. A lot over the last few years, especially as you've covered a lot of basketball. As the league has just had some craziness. So before I ask about your favorite moment, can you talk, Jaron, about the time that in 2023, in front of many NBA players who were on set that day, they brought you out to shoot some free throws? What was that like? What do you remember about it? And how cool is it to be shooting free throws? You played in big gyms, but this is national TV.
Yeah. So So I think we talked about it before the podcast, but the whole hook, I shot free throws on ESPN with Kendrick Perkins, Jalen Rose, and
Yep.
maybe Richard Jefferson. I don't
Yep.
remember if he was there.
He was there.
Um, I get into work that day. My producer, Greg Fonseca, who's not with the company anymore, but one of the best producers I've ever worked with, the best producer I've ever worked with, um, came up to me and was like, it's been, when you're in the newsroom, you're talking like, Jaren played basketball. He shot great free throws. They looked me up and they saw my free throw percentage and whatnot.
92.5%, folks.
Yeah, it was pretty high. And then it was always a joke, like, "We're gonna get Jaren on TV one day, to shoot from free throws," and I was like, "There's no why? That wouldn't be, wouldn't be entertaining at all." And then the Miami Heat, I think you looked it up, they made 40 in a row, is that what it was?
Yeah, 40 in a row,
Um,
Jan 10, 23. They beat the Thunder by 1 point. They needed all
there you
40.
go, so they needed all the free throws, but that was the hook. It was a regular season game, and he came in, he was like, "I want you to make more than 40 in a row." And I was like, "There's no way." I haven't shot a free throw probably since, I don't know, 2018, back in the Gordon. Probably the game you called, your very last game you called. It's probably the last free throw I ever shot.
Yes.
Um, Maybe I'd even shoot a free throw that game, probably not. Um, but
Get that while you keep
um,
going.
but they called me up and Kendrick Perkins at the time had a hip injury, so he couldn't shoot free throws. And I was like, "Perk, give me your jersey. I'll wear your jersey." So I wore a Perk jersey. And we did a little competition between me, Richard, and Jalen Rose, I think. I haven't seen the clip in so long. And unfortunately, I went 3 of 5. But the funny story is, I went 19 of 20 prior because I had to practice a little bit. I went 19 of 20 to practice. I missed my first one. I made 19 in a row, and I thought I was money. I had to get on air. Obviously, I think I missed the first one.
Yeah.
It was a little embarrassing. Everyone loves bringing that moment up. It's probably my most famous moment of all. Like I'll come up. I'm home right now in the Bay Area. People will literally come up. "Oh, you shot free throws with Jalen Rose and Kendrick Perkins and Richard Jefferson," and that's like their lasting memory of me working at ESPN. But that was the story with that. Unfortunately, I think, like you said, I went 3 of 5.
Yeah. 3 in a
Not
row in the middle, though. You said you didn't end on a mate. Didn't have here's, but I will ask: did they let you, or did you at least get to shoot again at the break? Because every hooper knows you never leave on a miss.
like you know, if you could probably imagine, I got so much crap from not only, the analysts on the show, but our producers, um, everyone at home. I got maybe 50 messages of people just recording the TV. I didn't tell anyone that this was happening. Just people just seeing it at the gym, seeing it at the restaurant. Um, you know, we are on national TV at lunchtime on the West Coast, at least at 12 o'clock. So a lot of people saw it. A lot of people told me how much of a bum I was missing free throws because, like you said, 92%, the expectations are pretty high here. So got a lot of crap about it. So I kind of walked away ashamed of myself.
Well, the good news for you, so I've got your senior year numbers. And so I do remember this game very well because I called basketball at Endicott for 4 years. You guys did lose to Endicott in what I remember being a highly contested game, and one of only 2 road games I ever got to call. But we're not here to hear about that. You had 11 points and 7 assists. Turned it over 3 times with 2 steals. You made 3 threes, which was your most in a month, and one of 5 games you had with at least 3 threes made your senior year. Unfortunately, you did not get to the free throw line. You had made your last 4 attempts against Salve Regina, regular season, postseason. They actually left the conference now. They're gone. There's been
Yeah.
some conference, and they renamed the conference, so you don't have the beautiful CCC anymore, but you played your most minutes since the previous game against Endicott. So, nevertheless, you ended your college career 90% as a senior. And for those that would love to know, Jaren shot 85% of the first year. The second year didn't happen. He only shot 71%, but we don't talk about that. 92.5 as a junior with a career high in attempts, no less. And then senior year, 90%. So you didn't quite have the 40, 50, 40, 90, but you had the 38, 32, 92, which honestly offsets. So
Yeah. Yeah.
deserved. I have to do a deep dive. Always love basketball statistics. And we're talking to a former hooper that works as a content guy at the worldwide leader. We have to dig deep. You knew that was coming, Jaren. We knew that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you living reliving those moments. I don't think about it too often anymore. Like I don't remember that. Like you probably have much a better memory than me from that game. I do remember we lost my last game against
Well,
Endicott.
hey, I know you probably don't want to watch because it was a lot. If you want to see the highs, I still have the footage. Maybe
Send it
you don't.
over.
I'll send it over.
I,
When this is,
I'll
I
say
still
I'd
have the
love to
footage.
see it actually. 11-7, I'll take that day.
Yeah,
Especially with Eric and Garrison on the team. My stats kind of dwindled
yeah.
by the time I was a senior.
Of course. All right. So getting back to it, a lot of when you talk about ESPN and live production, those that haven't worked in it might miss some of the intricacies that you were talking about. So much goes into one segment. Just having a 90-second hit between commercials, which ESPN has become famous for during NBA. Generally, it's after the first quarter and the third quarter only. But actually, no, it's all game. So between every timeout that's called, every 3 minute, only media timeouts. I know 90-second break, come back, show two highlights. I can imagine. Get the highlights. Someone has to have that ready. You have to know who to send it to, know how long the break is, count them in, who's got it, who's playing it, who's overlaying it, who's throwing to them. So, what is something, Jaren, about doing the type of work that you do that you believe goes unnoticed to myself and all the millions of viewers that only see the final product and what's being aired to us?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot, like I said, a lot goes into it. What you're describing there is what we call pod busters. So in between quarters and right before or right yeah, right before halftime we have one. But that's the NBA countdown crew. I don't typically work on countdown. I like fill in when they need it. But that's a pod buster. Essentially, like during the regular season, we're grabbing the best play. What's happened? The mellow ball throws a behind the back pass. Like we'll use that. Or Obi Toppin did a 360 dunk. Like that's a perfect moment. And we'll grab that and put it on air for, like you said, it's less than 60 seconds, really. It's a quick hit, but those are our in-game stuff. But I work on NBA Today, which is our Monday through Friday studio show. That's our daily NBA show, hosted by Malika Andrews with Kendrick Perkins. Richard Jefferson has been doing a lot more games, so he hasn't been doing as much studio stuff. But we've had Danny Green on a lot, Udonis Haslam, Ramona Shelburne, Brian Windhorst, Shams Charania, these type of guys, Dave McMenamin, a lot of reporters, a lot of former players. In the past, we've had Austin Rivers in the last couple years. A lot of great people to work with, Vince Carter. But my job as the producer is every day there's a rundown. Um, for this 1 hour show. It's a rundown that the main producer builds. So as a producer now, I probably 2 to 3 to 4 times a week, depending, we'll rotate. Probably typically 3 times a week right now. I'm building out line by line what our show is going to be, what topics, what questions, what video we need, what sound bites we're using, what highlights we want to run. Um, what reporters we want to use, what breaking news we're preparing for, and then you have to talk to talent, like get their answers, like what do they feel about um, Rich Paul's comments on LeBron and his future opting into his contract, like what. Let me hear what you guys think, and then we build our questions, our segments off of what they think. Um, so a lot goes into it. I'd say at night, my typical day is we have a 12 to 1 show. I get home around probably 2:30 Pacific time. I'll probably reopen my laptop at around 6 and work until probably 11 at least, and then get in at 6 in the morning and start grinding on that next day. So it's a grind during the week. It's a lot of hours, but you know that's what working in sports is. And that's the trade-off. I wouldn't I wouldn't trade it for anything. I've worked at ESPN for 7 years, and it feels like it's a cliche, but it feels like I haven't worked a day in my life. It's covering sports. It's covering NBA right now, the project I'm on. The last couple years, it could be much worse. I watch a lot of basketball, a lot of NBA, just because I need to know what's happening in the games at night, to produce a show on it. Um, that could feel a little repetitive watching, Hornets Bulls on a Tuesday night. I'm sure not many people are watching that if you're not a fan of that team. But I got the dual screen, I got the 4 box league pass going. Just so much goes into it. I can't even state like how many PAs, production assistants, associate producers are in the background cutting all the video, making sure it looks good. Directors in the control room. We have our Everything. The camera people. It's just it's a full blown operation. If you're ever in LA, Zach, please hit me up. I could show you behind the scenes. Um, but there's a lot that goes into it, and everyone needs to be all kind of like in cohesion here with the producer because the producer is the one that maps out everything we're doing. Um, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
That is as thorough as can be. That's a point guard. You're leading that. That was the perfect possession. Every detail, and it ended up with a 4-point play. You to Demers, you get the assist. You had the flashy pass. He put it down, but you put him in position to succeed, as it sounds like the producers do for everybody else on the show.
Exactly. That's a great metaphor. Exactly.
All right, so one more question before we move to the get to know Jaren Yang better section. What advice would you offer, Jaren, to those who want to become producers and creators of content at a high level professionally?
Yeah, so we kind of hit on it. Put yourself out there, whether it's a big company, whether it's small company, whether it's something you're starting on your own, like this podcast, Zach. Like this is a great example of putting yourself out there and you know have a body of work ready to show someone. Have a highlight reel. Have a portfolio. I used to have a portfolio site. I don't even think it's up anymore, but I kind of lived off that. That was my resume. Have that reel ready to go if you want to be on camera. Have writing examples ready to go. It doesn't matter how big or how small. Like Athletica that I worked on that we talked about earlier, we pushed users. I was a growth marketing manager at some point in that with that company, and our numbers were low. 100 viewers per article, but it didn't matter. We were pushing it as much as we could, and I was getting the experience. So whether or not it's for a pro team or a network or a blog, just put yourself out there, show people your work. Um, so that's probably the biggest key when you do network with somebody. They want to see what you've done. I've had countless people message me on LinkedIn, and I want to see what they've done. I could look at a resume, but give me some examples. I'm a content person. I need to see video. I need to see writing examples. Um, so that's almost more important um, when networking, at least having those examples. So that'll be my advice is for anyone trying to work in sports in general. Show your work to people.
Yeah, well said. Pass it down. Make sure they can see you're capable, because anyone can talk a big game, but if you can't show the work behind it, it's going to be hard for people you haven't met. And whether this is on air or writing, whatever, they won't always see your face, so they have to trust that the work they're getting is good. So they need to read it before they give you, because anyone can type something out, put on a resume, but if you don't have the
Yeah.
backing, then it's hard to form these trusts. Because a lot of, and especially Jaren, right? We're in a digital age now. We're not in the 80s, we're not even in the 90s. We're far from the 90s where everyone flies out for everything. Back in the day, and people get hired as announcers. In journalists, you may have one or two samples, but you're going in person or you're just putting it out in the mail. Now you're just sending email. People are getting thousands and thousands and thousands of messages, right? So
Yep.
you're essentially saying that people need to make sure, send their best work, be consistent, and make sure that what they're sending and what they have is on par with the career and the job they
Yep.
want. And if they do that, they'll be good to go.
Yep. Take pride in your work for sure.
Okay, so we talked about your career, we talked about your early years. Now let's talk about some of your favorite things that don't have to do with your job. So you got a couple of recurring questions here. I like to change it up a little bit each time. So Jaren, will start off. A common question here: favorite food to cook for Jaren Yang?
My favorite food to cook. It's probably fried rice.
Okay.
Probably fried rice. Don't do it too often, but yeah, I like making fried ever since I was young. I love my mom makes great fried rice, so kind of compete with her and my sister to see who has better ones. So I'd probably say that.
Do you win? Do you win that contest, or is your
I
mom? Your
don't
mom?
know. It's kind of been falling off, honestly, Zach. It's not it hasn't been as good, I will say. I think I've lost my touch a little bit. My fiance is a fantastic cook, so she does most of it. And I've kind of lost my touch cooking a little bit. But I could definitely, make serviceable meals for us.
All right, good. You're doing your job. All
Yeah.
right. Favorite sporting event you've been to?
Oh, Okay, this is, I've been to a lot of like finals games at this point for work, and I've been to Western Conference Finals games. But I'd say as a fan, uh, I think it was 661 for Bonds. Might have been 660 or 661 when he tied or passed Willie Mays. I think it was past Willie Mays, 661. My dad and I used to go to a lot of games, especially during the Bonds era. Whenever we could go, we'd get scalper tickets right outside the arena right before the game. And, watching Barry Bonds to this day is, up there with Steph Curry now, but
Mm.
one of my favorite Bay Area athletes of all time, really. It was incredible, Zach. Like going to those games, the anticipation for him getting pitches essentially, uh, if he wasn't walked, and I think when
139
he
walks in a year. I remember that.
exactly. So, um, going to I think it was 661. I think it was. You could probably look it up if it was at home game.
I already got the
Um,
details for you if it was 661. So whenever you're ready.
remind me, what was it?
April 13th, 04, 661, went 468 feet. It was his Bond's 29th home run into the Cove.
What day was it in the
April
week?
13th. Oh, you want a day of the week? Okay, 1 second. April 13th. This was a Tuesday.
Okay, maybe it wasn't Tuesday. I don't know if we go to a game on Tuesday. But it might have been 660 then. But that was the Bonds era in general. We used to go
That
to
was
a
a
ton of
Monday.
games.
He hit 660 on a Monday.
So that sounds a lot more likely than a
Okay.
Tuesday. Um, so I think it was 6-6. It was the Bonds era in general was to this day watching Steph Curry live is awesome, but Bonds was second best, I'd say.
And we go from best sporting event, best book you've read. I know that's the hard. If we all read hundreds of books, whether they're for school, for fun, for work, do you have a favorite that sticks with you?
Yeah, my favorite book is apologize if it's um you know not safe here, but it's the
Anything
art of
goes.
not the art of not giving an the art of not giving a fuck is what it's called. Um, it's basically a book of I haven't read it in years, but essentially it's caring about what you're doing at the moment. Everyone's always looking ahead. Everyone's looking at what I want to be in 5 years, what do I want to be in 10 years, what do I want to be when I have kids and when I have a house and when I'm 50 years old, 60 years old, to retirement. It's just living in the moment and just kind of being who you are and being okay and comfortable in your own skin. Um, that is, to this day, I read it right after college, really. And when I was in Connecticut, I read this. Um, and it really just changed my whole mindset. I was like enjoying life and every second that you're in currently. Everyone's always focused on what's next. And, you know, if most of the world does that and life just passes you by. Um, so just kind of living in the moment is something that I try to do every day. It's really hard to, but I try to for sure.
And the best, and fill in the blank here, Jaren. The best
Okay.
decision I have ever made was.
Wow. Probably going to Gordon. It was a big step. Um, I didn't like it at first. I tried to transfer my freshman year, but I wouldn't have been at ESPN. Wouldn't be at ESPN. Um, and my whole life would have changed. Who knows? I had committed to initially Concordia Irvine, which was a Division II school, NAIA, at the time. Committed there, but the coach told me, you may not see a minute in 4 years. Coach Murphy said, this is your starting job to lose. I don't know if you remember him, but Richie Armand was the point guard prior to me. He had torn his ACL the year before, and there was just no point guards on the roster. So it was kind of my job to lose, and I started for 4 years. Um, that's kind of what drew me there, and I made great connections there, and ended up at ESPN. Like I said, I connected with somebody on LinkedIn from Gordon, and it's in a small school, so everyone tries to take care of each other. Um, but yeah, that's probably my long fill in the blank answer there.
And find any closing thoughts, Jaren, before we wrap up. Anything else you want to say? Leave anybody with a lasting thought, view, or maybe we're just done. Anything?
No, no, I mean, appreciate you having me on. I watch your work from afar. calling games and whatnot. A lot of New York games. SUNY, what's the school you were calling a lot of games for? SUNY,
CUNY. We're at the CUNY. We're a lot of John Jay
CUNY,
College.
John Jay College. Yeah.
Yes, John Jay. You've probably seen a lot of John Jay shirts on the pod episodes. We got that old school LeBron 2008 Cavs player tee today, but
Hey, the lasting image here is, if LeBron were to move, I'm not saying this is not an inside source. If he
mhm.
were to move, I think Cleveland ending
Yeah,
it there would be poetic. Um,
it would. Although, and not to get all basketball, from what I saw, they'd have to give up Garland, Hunter, and Allen to Max, so it would be a steep move.
very
Two
steep.
All Stars and a Sixth Man of the Year runner up, and he is LeBron James. And yes, I say that as I wear the shirt, but he is 41. And these guys are
100%.
24, 26, and 27.
Yeah. So you're
So
not doing it. The
I would not.
GM Zach.
GM Zach, GM Zach says no, but GM Kobe Altman is not GM Zach. As long as you can
Yeah.
aggregate properly and send them to different teams, which are the fun apron rules. I'm sure you guys, when Bobby Marks stops by, I'm sure he runs down all
Bobby's the
your
man.
apron rules. Yes,
Yep.
but very nice to have you on, Jaren. Look forward to continuing to speak and follow you at ESPN as you take in a couple more years, even above the producer level. But keep grinding. It's been awesome to see a CCC Hoops alum, CNE, just out there repping. Even you made 3 free throws on national TV. How many conference players? Look, there were some amazing players. I'm not going to bore people by just naming Keith Brown, Kamal Walker, Austin Cooney, the great duo from Nichols, but Echeverria and Bruton, who both scored 2,000 points. We're not here to just name drop. Eric Demers, of course, but you're the one that went and made 3 free throws on national television. So give yourself some credit, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Appreciate it, Zach. All right, man.
All right, he is Jaren Yang, producer for ESPN. This has been the Zach with an H podcast, and we will see you soon.